Hello hunters, it's Drew. This is my element build guide for Title Update 3. I'm going to try something new in this video and try to provide some guidance on augments. The random systems in Sunbreak can cause some issues with being able to recommend a build, but I'd like to share my approach that's worked well for me. Similar to the last build video, a couple of things to cover before we get started. These builds will not be using any health drain or defense reduction skills. I just don't prefer to use these skills, but if you do, you should be able to adjust the builds to your liking. There are a couple of special skills to go over before we get started. These builds will use level 1 Powder Mantle. How this skill works is that if you strike the monster 30 times, you will glow red. If you are knocked over during this time, you will explode and deal minor damage to nearby targets. However, if you do not get knocked over and take damage for 20 seconds, you will glow blue. If you strike the monster while blue, you will deal a pretty large burst of damage to that part. This build also uses Intrepid Heart. This is an older skill from Title Update 2, but when you strike the monster, a bar fills above your health bar. It takes 40 hits to fill this bar. Once it is full, the next hit will have reduced damage as well as no knockback. This synergizes well with Powder Mantle, as it can kind of protect you from being knocked out before turning blue. For both of these skills, Phial bursts do count as hits, so while amped, the charge rate is basically twice as fast. Lastly, something that may be surprising is a shift to crit. I have a video on my channel discussing it, but the short of it is that it is not a huge difference to building attack, as the new armor this update makes running crit make a lot more sense. The crit video will be linked in the description if you're interested. Remember that element builds are meant to target monster weaknesses, so reference the hunter's notes to determine which build you should use against each monster. Alright, let's start with the thunder build. My recommendation is to use a Zinogre switch axe. I always prefer to use Phial switch boost, so I augment for the rampage slot. However, you can just go for 2 attack and 6 element and use anti-species if you prefer that. The talisman I am using is a Rapid Morph 3 talisman with 2 slots. This talisman has become easier to try and get with the new melding options to target skills. I think it is a good goal to try and meld to get a talisman similar to this one, but if you don't have one like this right now, you can just have a few less damage skills. The chaotic helm is used here and it's a very efficient piece. Something worth noting is that the strife will not be that helpful here, since this build does not have anything that lets us maintain red health. Next, the Risen Kaiser Mail. This is just a very efficient piece to use and where we get the Powder Mantle from. I use the Golden Loom Braces, it just has great slots and a lot of skills that support the build. The Ancient Coil X, I recommend getting a 1 slot upgraded to a 2 slot in this piece. It makes this piece really customizable and just fits really well into the build. Lastly, the Flaming Espinasse Heal. This is where we'll get Intrepid Heart. My recommendation here is to get a double slot augment on the legs. This is a more difficult augment to get, but it is really worth it. Intrepid Heart is a great comfort skill, and investing in these pair of legs to make it customizable is a really great choice. However, if you augment and just get a really good skill, this could work out too. You would just need to make up for that 1 slot. For augments for the rest of the equipment, a big boost to damage on this build will be getting Critical Eye to level 7, since the last point gives 10% affinity. What I recommend is augmenting for a list of skills. Essentially, if you augment and get any of these skills that you have decorations for, you can swap out that decoration and put in Critical Eye. You can do this with 3 of the pieces to basically get 3 additional skills for your build. This can take a lot of augments, but I consider the augment system kind of a gear progression where you eventually fill in what you're looking for. And since you're not just searching for 1 skill, it becomes a lot more reasonable to do this. For the Chaotic Helm, you can use the new augment option that always removes a skill to add another. Since Strife isn't really used, I was able to augment it out and put in Crit Boost instead. Similarly, the Golden Loom Braces might be an option for this type of augment too, if you feel like you do not benefit a lot from peak performance, since it's only activated when your HP is full. So in my build, I was able to get 3 extra skills, getting to Crit Eye level 7, but also adding 1 point each into Power Prolonger and Wirebug Whisperer. Of course, this build works perfectly fine whether you want to augment like this or not. Even with the legs, you would just have 1 less skill. The ice build with the Diora switch axe is basically identical except for the new Iron Shell decorations that give Kushala blessing. These decorations will increase ice element by 10% with 2 points, and it's pretty massive. Unfortunately, you will lose speed sharpening because of this. If you prefer element Phial, I will have some builds featuring thunder and ice towards the end of the video if that is your preference. Next, the fire build uses the Volcanic Switch Element Phial switch axe. This build does not use Power Prolonger since it's an element Phial switch axe and it is easier to amp. However, if you prefer to have Power Prolonger, you can adjust the build based on your preference. I typically just use Phial switch boost even on an element Phial because I'm hopelessly addicted to it, but anti-species should do more damage here. So the best augment should be 6 element and 2 attack. However, Initially, my recommendation is to augment Sharpness and 5 points of Element. This is because the last point of Critical Eye gives 10% affinity, which is more valuable than slotting in Handicraft here. If you are able to slot in Handicraft after augments, then I suggest changing the augments to 2 attack and 6 element. This build also uses the new Flame Scale Teostra Blessing decorations to get 10% more fire damage. So after augments, I was able to slot in the Handicraft decoration, but also I was able to max out Wirebug Whisper because I like that Wirebug recovery rate. So the water build is basically exactly the same, except we use the Almudron Switch Axe and use Kushala Blessing instead of Teostra Blessing. We do get an extra 1 slot on the Switch Axe, which is nice to get extra speed sharpening. And finally, the Dragon build is also very similar, except there are more slots on the axe, so the 2 attack 6 element augment is used. There is 4 handicraft used here just because of the 4 slot, but only 3 of it is required to reach purple sharpness. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also going to include element Phial builds for thunder and ice if you prefer to use element Phial instead of power Phial. They build very similarly. I hope you found this video helpful. I found these element builds to be very strong and also have a lot of potential to grow with augments. Give it a like and subscribe if you want to support me and the channel. These videos take a significant amount of work, so big thank you for any support. I'm gonna go rest and take it easy a few days before getting back to more content. I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and take care.